Hey, it's a beautiful day. Today we're going to be talking about my 63.5 Ford Falcon. It's not something I've showed very much, and so I'm hoping that you'll enjoy this. If I do see that we have a lot of interest in the Ford Falcon, there's plenty of work to do on it. So let's dive right in. This is a 1963.5 Ford Falcon. It's a Sprint model. I've got the emblems in a box in there. And it looks like it was in the process of being painted when I bought it. I bought it at a yard sale of all things and just kind of asked the question, do you have any garage type stuff? And the guy took me out and showed me this car. And so I was able to get it from him. And it was in the process of having a Mustang engine put in it out of a 93 Mustang. And it had all the fuel injection stuff on it. And he had done some work to start to wire the computer, and so that hole was where everything kind of went through over there. And there was just wires everywhere. He had a lot of labeling done and a lot of the pre-work done. It came with a 5-speed transmission, a T5, that was installed, but not really installed. It was just sitting in there and bolted up, but it had no clutch or anything on it. And I got it that way. I had it towed home, and and at the time it had some Krager SS wheels on it that had they were what do you call those, unilugs, and I don't like those at all, so I did some work to get some different wheels, but we'll talk about different pieces of it as we go. So let's talk about the engine first. After watching some engine actually some fuel injection videos around the wiring and being able to make everything work, I did a little bit of legwork and looked at the parts that were in the car, and it turns out the computer that was in it was out of a 4-cylinder, so that would never work. And then it just looked like a lot of work to me, so I decided to go old school. I purchased an intake manifold, um, um, a 4-barrel carburetor, which I went with a much smaller 500 CFM carburetor, but it's a 4-barrel. It's a Holly carburetor, but it's I forget what they call that model, but it's anyway, it works good. And my goal was not to have ultimate horsepower, but more to have drivability. I needed a distributor, and I actually just went on eBay and bought one of these GM type distributors that have basically just one wire to kind of make it run. And and then I had to do some work. The car came with these belts on it, or not the belts, but the accessory drive. And the pump that was on it, it seemed like it wasn't pumping correctly, or it was pumping backwards. So I had to do a bunch of work and ended up going through a couple of water pumps before I finally was able to make one work to make the water flow how it needed to flow. I'm not sure what this radiator's out of, but it fits. I'm sure it's got the hoses on the right side. I'm sure it's out of a Ford. Anyway, I got it going. I got it to run, and then once I did that, then I started working on getting the transmission put in. I bought a clutch. I had to go with initially I had bought the wrong clutch. I bought because I don't know why I was thinking 5-liter Mustang, and I think I used 85 as my 5-liter Mustang, and apparently that used a 10-inch clutch instead of a 10.5-inch, and so the flywheel on this is for a 10.5-inch, which I was able to go ahead and order, but now I'm stuck with extra parts. One of the things I did also was I put a fuel pressure regulator on this, and that was just mostly because I wanted the carburetor to run well, and it's important. I don't think a lot of people know that it's important that the float level is a function of the amount of fuel pressure that is pushing against that float. And so if you control the fuel pressure, you'll get much more consistent mixture. And so that's what I've done there. When you pick up somebody else's project, you're kind of stuck with a lot of decisions that they made. And so this transmission was one of those things. This is actually a 4-cylinder transmission, T5. And I knew that when I looked up the code for it. And from what my understanding is that they're still rated to handle quite a bit of power. And so I went ahead and changed the pilot bearing on the transmission, and I put this in. And I'm not sure if there's a difference in the shaft length or anything like that, but I've got a I have yet to drive this a whole lot, but it has been fine. The shifting's a little funky, and it's because I did. It's mostly, I think, related to the clutch. I did convert it to a um, cable clutch, and so I bought the kit from Driveline, Modern Driveline, which is basically just a it's a just a plate that you install, and then you do some work on the actual clutch pedal, and then you hook up your cable, and then you route it down so that it pulls the release bearing so that you can disengage the clutch. I've got to make some adjustments on it. It does grind a little bit when I shift. So that's kind of where the transmission is at. I may end up having to pull it back off again, and so we'll see about that. The rear axle in this thing is a Ford 9-inch. It's a Ford 9-inch with limited slip. It's a 373 ratio, and it was leaking uh, from the front seal. And so when I went ahead and pulled it out, you can see it's got traction bars, and it's got kind of, it's really hard for me to get on the ground here because um, it's muddy, but it's yeah. So I've got to do some work on that. I went ahead and changed the seal, but I had a pretty good groove in the yoke, and knew that it was going to continue to leak, and so I did order a new yoke. I have yet to replace it, um, but I will do that. Most likely what I'll end up doing there will be that I'll end up going to just pulling the whole center assembly out of the rear end and taking it somewhere to have the crush washer reset on it, because when I did it, I just kind of marked where it was, and I was able to put it back where it was. But I don't know that that's really long term the right decision. And so if I have to change the whole pinion, the whole assembly of the yoke, then I'll do that. I'll just go ahead and take it somewhere and have that done. When I got this car, it had an automatic shifter in it, and so I believe that it's been running probably a different drivetrain most of its life. And the guy I bought it from said that he got it without an engine, and was able to source a rebuilt 93 Mustang 5-liter for it, and then he was able to source that transmission, and had started that project. And he does body work, and so he had gone through the car and had kind of highlighted everywhere that it needed work, and so you'll see little marks on it from where, there's little defects as he saw them. There's one there, up here. So I mean, that's very probably pretty good attention to detail. The car is not rusty at all, but it has had the rear wheel wells cut out. And so you can see here that I don't even want to, this is like the thing I'm least proud of, and that is that it has Bondo all in here to make this shape. So so it will need at some point some fenders cut out. And what a lot of people will do is they'll take the front fenders, cut them out, and then graft them onto the back. So that's kind of a something that will need to be done at some point in the future. The car was originally white, um, and it must have been used for drag racing. One of the things that I did notice was how the front wheels are on one side farther forward than the back. I mean, than the other side. We'll go over to the other side and take a look at that. And what I'm understood is there's a much bigger gap there. You can see the gap, whereas over here we have almost no gap. And somebody told me that what they do is they use that to cheat the lights so that you have more time to accelerate from when you brake the light to when you make the light to when you brake the light. It actually gives you another 2 or 3 inches of getting off the line. I think it's a little ridiculous, but I think that's kind of what it is. Inside, I noticed a bunch of crap on the seats, and what happened was a bird got in here and it pooped on the seats. So I've got to do some cleanup. I did let it out, so it didn't die in here. And my guess is it probably came in through that hole in the front under there. Let's do a little cold start on it. Hopefully you can hear the fuel pump. That was a nice start. Now, I am running a single exhaust on it, and that was mostly because I didn't want to, I just didn't know how I was going to get it to a muffler shop. And so what I did was I ordered a factory stock exhaust for it, and I was able to make it match the manifolds that I had. One of the manifolds that I had was incorrect for this car, and I ended up having to buy one from a Sunbeam Tiger to put on the left side of on the driver's side of the engine to make the exhaust system work. But it bolted right up, and it's actually beautiful. But it's a single exhaust. That's the only thing. I'm pretty happy with the way it runs, and I've got a. Actually, I'm not getting any oil pressure reading. I wonder if I've got that hooked up or not. There it goes. Oh, I moved the ignition key, and then I got all my readings over there. So yeah, this engine is running at about, I don't know, that's just under 60 psi. And I do have an air-fuel ratio gauge here. I don't have it installed yet, so I've got to drill through the pipe and install a sender, and then hopefully we'll at that point be able to monitor our mixture and make this thing as efficient as it can be. You know, my goal is not to have a drag racer, but to just kind of have a car that I can drive and enjoy, that is fairly lightweight and gets fairly decent mileage. There's some drawbacks to this car obviously it was probably raced, so the actual heater box is completely gone out of it. So there's no heater in it, no AC. So I may have to remedy that. But I like the car. I think it's a cool car, and the fact that it's still around today, and I do have kind of some information about who owned it and why it was moved on and that kind of stuff. So I do have a little bit of history with it, but I don't know all the details. So that's kind of where we are. I appreciate you watching. I'll kind of keep you up to date on this car, and we'll talk more about it as we get a chance to work on it. Thanks again.